I think by now you've gotten the point that interpreting Scripture is not as simple as just reading it and following everything it says to the letter. Oh, there are some who say that's exactly what you should do, but even they don't always follow this interpretive framework. Even they understand that there are some passages that count as hyperbole and don't carry the weight or force of law. Nowhere is this more apparent than in some of the words of Jesus. Hello, I'm Stuart Baskin, pastor of First Presbyterian Church of Tyler, Texas, and this is your daily devotional for Tuesday, March 4th, 2025. Read through the Sermon on the Mount sometime, maybe just after this devotional. You'll find it in the Gospel of Matthew in chapters 5 through 7. The sermon contains some of the most beloved and most memorable passages in the Bible. It's where, for example, you'll find the Beatitudes. You'll also find the admonition, "Do not judge, so that you may not be judged." And on Ash Wednesday each year, we read from the 6th chapter, which warns against practicing one's piety before others. But it is a section in chapter 5 in which Jesus says he has not come to abolish the law or the prophets, but has come to fulfill them, that presents the biggest challenges to us. In this section, Jesus ups the ante, if you will, of the law's requirements. Just listen to this brief passage in which Jesus intensifies the laws concerning adultery. He says, "You have heard that it was said, 'You shall not commit adultery.' But I say to you that everyone who looks at a woman with lust has already committed adultery with her in his heart. If your right eye causes you to sin, tear it out and throw it away. It is better for you to lose one of your members than for your whole body to be thrown into hell. And if your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off and throw it away. It is better for you to lose one of your members than for your whole body to go into hell." Look, adultery is serious. It causes marriages to fall apart, children to be estranged from one parent or another, and homes to divide. It's no wonder that laws concerning adultery in ancient Israel were quite strict, certainly much more so than today. In some cases, the punishment for adultery in the law in the Old Testament was death. But what Jesus does here is to say that just looking at someone with lust means you've already committed adultery. Why, even our most morally upright president over the last several decades, Jimmy Carter, admitted to having committed adultery in his heart many times. I dare say most of us have. But I also notice that most of us, dare say all of us, none of us, has ever torn out our right eye or cut off our right hand. But if we took Jesus absolutely at his word, that is exactly what we would expect. Why, not even those fundamentalist ministers who've been caught having had adultery tear their eye out or cut their hand off. Why not? The answer is that we seem to instinctively understand the difference between absolute rules, "You shall not commit murder" comes to mind, and those which are hyperbole. The church has never demanded such acts of self-mutilation for adultery, let alone for lust that is never acted upon. In other words, the church has practiced a kind of wisdom in interpreting this command. John Calvin says, "It is not Christ's intention that we should mutilate our body to obey God, for as all would be glad for their passions to be put under no strain, but rather to give them to free run, Christ in hyperbole bids us prune back anything that stops us offering God obedient service as he demands in his law. He does this deliberately, for men are too generous to themselves and the limits they allow over these things. If the mind were pure, it would find eyes and hands consistent. Certainly they have no motivation of their own." So this is John Calvin speaking. He often interprets Scripture literally. But even Calvin understood this passage, among others, isn't mean to be taken literally. Instead, he offers a wise reading of the text to get at its underlying meaning, which is that not only is actual adultery a problem, so is lust, even when we do not act upon it. So take a deep breath. Put down the hatchet. For heaven's sake, do not pull your eye out or cut off your hand. That's not the message here. It is a piece of hyperbole intended to make the point that just thinking about adultery is, if not as serious as adultery itself, it is something to be taken seriously in our lives. Talking about plucking out your eye or cutting off your hand sure gets your attention, though, doesn't it? That's the purpose of hyperbole. Tomorrow, how do we adapt old ways to modern sensibilities? But for now, may God continue to bless you and keep you in all that you do this day and in all the days ahead.